24-hour game development project. Lessons learned coming up. Hey guys, it's Travis Vroman here with another update on the 24-hour game development project. If you don't recall, it's the project that I announced a while back as far as seeing if I could develop a full game in 24 hours. And that's 24 cumulative hours, not consecutive. So it's not a calendar day, it's just 2 hours here, 3 hours there, whatever. And if you watch my completion video, you'll get some of my overall feelings on the release of that product and what I think of it and whatnot. But in general, it's not really overwhelmingly positive as far as I'm concerned. I have a much higher standard for what I would like to release, and this didn't really meet those standards. But I also kind of knew that was going to happen when I took on a 24-hour project. I knew that you can't develop a super polished game in 24 hours. It's just not going to happen. Especially when you're making all the assets and everything yourself. So what I want to talk about in this video is some of the lessons that I learned and how it might change the next time I approach one of these things, or if I approach one of these things again. So I guess that's really the first thing that I want to come to is I mentioned in the previous video that I wrote my own engine, and I put that in air quotes because I really don't consider it a full-blown engine. There are parts of it that are super seriously hacked, and it's not a full-blown game engine. It doesn't have collision. It barely has audio support, but that's super hacky. It's a framework at best, and I think I could build an engine, a full-blown engine off of it, and I might do that. But certainly it's not a full engine. You can't even build an engine in 24 hours. Say nothing about building a game in 24 hours. That's hard enough. So one of the first things that I learned was, honestly, this isn't something that I learned. I already kind of knew this, but rolling your own tech, it's not a good idea for a 24-hour game. If you've got more time, maybe there's some benefits there if there's not an out-of-the-box engine that meets your needs. In this case, I probably should have gone with Unity or something like that, or maybe Construct, maybe some other already prepared game engine. But I chose to develop my own engine in this case because I felt that it would be much quicker for me to stand up what I need and only what I need than trying to learn how to do it in a different game engine. And I figured I'd spend less time learning and more time actually doing. And that was true, but the problem is I spent a lot of time doing invisible work, as I like to call it. And that's work that you don't really see. And for the most part, engine work is that. You don't really see that in the final game. I mean, obviously the engine is what renders the game, but you don't see all the work that went into the engine when you're actually playing the game. So I did that about about a quarter way into the project. I changed languages, which sounds bizarre, but it's not as bizarre as you might think. So I switched to TypeScript, which is a superset of JavaScript. So it transpiles to JavaScript, meaning that there's a transpiler that takes TypeScript and converts it down to JavaScript. It's not compiled because it doesn't output machine code. It outputs JavaScript. So for those of you that aren't familiar, I can put a link. I'll put a link in the description below to TypeScript, so you guys can kind of check that out. I might do another video about TypeScript specifically at a later time, but for now, just check out that link and if you're interested. So I got kind of fed up and frustrated with trying to make my code super modular and splitting things up in JavaScript because I'm just not a huge fan of the way that type of stuff is done in JavaScript, at least. I mean, with the advent of ES5 and ES6, there's some great things that they added, but especially with ES6, the support isn't always there yet, and if it is there, there's some performance issues and whatnot. So I tend to stick with a little bit older school JavaScript. So what I like about TypeScript is it provides, semi-strict typing, which means a variable can't just be assigned a number and then later on be reused as a string. I mean, there are ways around it, but it allows a nice, clean implementation of code. It allows the use of interfaces, which JavaScript doesn't have. It allows abstract classes, which again JavaScript doesn't really have, and it's a nice tool to use. It's to implement something cleanly. So my mistake here was I didn't start with TypeScript, and that's what I should have done. Instead of switching halfway through, I either should have stuck with JavaScript all the way to the end, which would have been a grind, let me tell you, or I should have picked TypeScript from the very beginning. I use TypeScript every day at work, and it's really nice to work in. It's kind of halfway between JavaScript and C#, kinda. Maybe it's some Objective-C, maybe, not really. But it's a really nice language to work in, especially compared to JavaScript. So I switched to that about a quarter of the way through the project, and that slowed me down because I had to go back and re-implement everything that I'd implemented in JavaScript and TypeScript. Another thing that I did was I also used a graphics program that I wasn't all that familiar with. So I got tired of the whole Adobe subscription model, and I'm not really okay with the idea of having to pay monthly for desktop software like that. So I decided to give this program called Affinity Photo a try, and it's $40, which is totally reasonable for a piece of software, especially something as powerful as it. And it is super powerful, and I like it, but the workflow in it is much different than what I'm used to, and there's a learning curve there, and I'm still not a master of it, and there's still things that I don't quite like about it, or maybe it's just because I'm not used to it. But again, I kind of went with something that I wasn't all that familiar with, and I should have just used Photoshop or something like that I've been using for years, instead of trying to use a new software package and upskill on that at the same time as trying to roll a game engine and actually complete a game. So I've posted several videos about advice on starting game development projects and whatnot, and I broke some of those rules with this project. And part of the reason for that is because those videos were actually recorded after I finished this project. So by the time you guys see this video, the project's actually been completed for a few weeks now. And I recorded those videos sort of out of a lessons learned from here. And those are rules that I'm putting in place, and I'm going to do my best to stick to unless there is some reason to break it, which there shouldn't be. But I'm putting those rules in place because of the lessons learned here. So again, like rolling my own tech, I've got a video about that. It probably wasn't the best move here. Maybe using my own game engine for casual games, at least in the near future. I don't know. I might be able to develop it into something that's usable. It's probably about 60% of the way there where it needs to be. But one of the major drawbacks of it is it doesn't have an editor, a visual editor. So everything is configured in JSON files, which is okay, but it makes the testing process a little bit tedious. So I've got some things to consider there, because anytime you roll your own engine, you've got to make a tool chain that goes with it, and that's really where all the time gets sunk, not the engine itself. So yeah, I rolled my own tech. I used a photo editor that I wasn't all that familiar with. I switched languages in the middle of development, and the last thing is that I didn't really schedule my time to develop the game well enough. And I'm actually going to make another video about scheduling your development time, because as I've mentioned, I do work a full-time job. And so I did this project mainly in my free time, which isn't all that much. But there were times where I could only work on it for, say, half an hour, or in one day it was only 10 minutes. And that makes it really hard to focus and get going and make major progress in that short amount of time. Because I know when I'm writing super complicated logic, that sometimes it can take me 15, 20 minutes to sort of get into that mindset and keep all those things at the forefront of my mind and stay concentrated. And so sometimes I wasn't even developing long enough to get to that point mentally, or I developed to the point where I just got there and maybe be there for a couple minutes and then stop. And that lowers productivity. At least it does for me. Now, maybe everybody else out there doesn't have that problem. Maybe it's just me, but I don't think it is. Like I said, I'm going to post another video about that, but that was really the last thing that I did. So those are my lessons learned from this process, and I hope this helps you guys out in one way or another. I hope that it's useful to you knowing some of these things about a product that's actually been released to the market, and knowing what some of my issues were with it, so that maybe you guys can use those lessons learned to prevent making those same mistakes when you go to develop a game. But anyway, that's really all I've got on this topic. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And please leave me some feedback below on this video. If you've run into some of these problems before, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear from you guys. So leave a comment below. Please hit the like button. I need those likes and subscriptions. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. I'm posting these videos daily. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow.